Welcome to the MSP Experience Game Changers, innovative thinkers in the MSP space. This is a limited edition series presented by Axcient, your trusted partner for comprehensive BCDR solutions for MSPs. I am your humble host, Robert Cioffi, CTO and co-founder of Progressive Computing, a New York-based MSP established in 1993. So what is Game Changers? Simply put, Game Changers is a video series designed to bring some of the most innovative thinkers in the MSP space into one-on-one conversations with an MSP leader. Our topics are carefully cultivated to push the envelope for MSPs, to deliver real-world problems we're facing, and to hear from industry experts on how to overcome these challenges in interesting and innovative ways. Now, today's episode is Navigating and Managing Vendor Relationships, and our special guest is Dennis Cockrell of EIT Networks. Dennis, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Can you just give us a quick introduction about yourself other than what I've already said?
Hey, Robert, thanks for having me. So we're just, I'm an MSP based out of Greenville, South Carolina. Been in existence since around 2011, was with a previous MSP before that, running their operations. So we've been around doing this for just a little while, and it's glad to be here with you.
Well, we, again, appreciate your time, and we consider you one of those industry thought leaders, very active in the space, and appreciate everything that you do. So, Dennis, let's just jump right into it. I mean, managing vendor relationships and navigating them just seems like and this problem that we were never. It's almost like being a parent, right? Like there was no handbook to this, and you're just kind of thrust into it and say, go figure this out. So, what does it feel like when you step into a vendor pavilion at a conference? I mean, are you overwhelmed? How do you decide who you're going to talk to?
Well, I mean, the longer we've been in the space, the more we stay in in this connected to the community, and the more we go to events, it's becoming. It feels more like a kind of a family reunion, sort of a homecoming. You get to see old friends and all of that. But man, when we were first getting to know the channel and coming to these events for the first time, it was considerably overwhelming. That's a huge, vendor pavilion. There's a lot of different vendors there. I guess at this point, at first, we just kind of, like you said, we learned it as we went along. We figured it out over years. But now, when we approach a vendor hall, we have a couple of key considerations in mind. We're looking for, number one, what have we been, what needs are we trying to meet? What identified needs do we already have, and where are there holes in our potentially in our stack or in our offering, and are we actually in the market for something? Number one, we try to absolutely stay away as best we can from flash decisions on the floor, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But how we decide who we're going to actually talk to is really what are those needs, and then maybe even beyond that specific identified need, we also kind of like to keep our ear to the ground as to who's new, what's fresh, what's out there that's completely off our radar. Doesn't mean we're looking to purchase or anything like that, but it's always good to get to know those new faces, because they're potentially the guys that are bringing in the next new thing that's really going to help you deliver the services that your clients are expecting. So. We typically try to stay away from the if we've already got tools in our stack that we haven't maximized. That's a big thing for us too, because if we've got unmaximized tools in our stack, we kind of want to stay away from the vendor floor as much as possible. Say hello to friends, but try not to stir up any more workforce when we get back from the conference.
Right. I've certainly been guilty of that here in my own MSP, where I've come back and say, hey, guess what? I found another shiny object for you guys to pour a whole bunch of time into that you don't have, and that you're overwhelmed working on some other things.
Yeah.
So you said some interesting things in your, in that answer that I want to just kind of unpack a little bit. It almost sounds like we should be premeditating a plan before we go to conferences. Do you do that? And what's your pulse? Do you think MSPs actually, like a week before, look at the list or evaluate their own missing gaps and actually have a plan? Or do you think people just kind of show up and wing it?
Well, I think it may depend on the position they hold within the company that they're representing. That may be part of it. I know for myself and for other top level staff, we we definitely go in. Those conferences aren't cheap, and so we're not going in, when we go to with an intentional purpose, obviously to absorb the content of the conference. But there's more to it than that. I mean, the channel is, for many years we didn't lean into the channel. We didn't stay connected, to the MSP community, and it was to our detriment. And so now we actually go with intentionality to try and make deepen connections that we maybe have but haven't really furthered, and then
Right.
to make new ones. So it's all about meeting new people, but that comes with it meeting new vendors. And so prior to going to a conference, we talk about it. Like, what are we looking to get out of the actual content of the conference? And then also, what are we, if anything, what are we looking to do as far as establishing a new vendor relationship? What holes are we trying to fill? And
I
I
love
typically
that.
go into that with at least two options in mind most of the time. I think this last Ride of Boom conference, one of my, just to be transparent, one of mine was actually trying to get to know some additional, like, we were looking for a better payment processor, so
Mm,
we actually explored those particular booths with a little more focus.
right.
So yeah, there's that.
Well, and interesting, payment processor, not something that you would think that would be showing up in mass at a cybersecurity focused
Right.
conference. But I love what you said there about engaging your own team and, coming together before and being intentional about, hey, my position is this, so maybe I'm not going to necessarily explore some deep technical tools, or maybe I can represent understanding what my technical team is really looking for. So I just love that idea of planning ahead and thinking about when I go to this, as you said, very expensive conference, right? It's not just the admission, the travel, the airfare, the hotels, but also your time, right? Especially those that show
Right.
up with 3, 4 people. So love those answers. Dennis, curious if you can talk a little bit about some of the criteria that you use to vet a new vendor partnership. I mean, what's important to you as a business? I guess just as a business, either whether it's from the technical side or the sales side or marketing or leadership, like what are some of the criteria, and do you have a process for vetting new partnerships?
Yeah. So I think it's a good question. I think we do have a process. It's probably not anything that's written down anywhere, but we tend to have a few key considerations when we're considering whether we want to partner with someone or have a new vendor come into our have a relationship with a new vendor. Obviously, kind of high on the list is long-term contracts. I mean, there's just practical things.
Hmm.
Are they are they easy? What's the scuttlebutt in the community? Are they easy to work with?
Right.
Have there been problems? I also like to know and do our research on their release cadence. If they're a brand new vendor in the
Oh,
space, you don't know necessarily if they innovating. Is it just a product that they've put out? And so it helps when they do have a little bit of track record, a little bit of history, to actually evaluate how often are they releasing updates to their products? Are they innovating regularly? Are they not? Do they have SSO available in this tool?
mm,
Is it, that's a consideration for us. Again, these are just some practical things. Is there a public API that's available? Do they integrate with our current stack? Do they not? Then, more, I guess, other considerations are how long have they been in business? Is this a brand new company? Do we just need to let them cook a little bit longer and then come back to
right.
them? Or sometimes it's not always a bad thing to be an early adopter. But you got to know what you're getting into if you're
Yes.
biting that off. And then, one of the key questions I like to ask as we're getting into to know a new vendor is, I don't know how honestly they always answer this question, but how likely are you to be acquired in the next 3 to 5 years? And
Interesting.
is that really what you're after? Are you looking to just kind of create a product, build it up, and then sell it? Because we don't particularly like to be along that journey. I don't know of many MSPs that do like to get to know a tool set and then have it just sold to someone else or acquired by one of the big behemoths. And then lastly, I mean, maybe things like, even simple things like, what's their social media community look like? Do they have a Discord channel for support? Things like that. Those are just some
Right.
practical things to ask as we're getting to know, and vet new vendors.
So it's interesting that you brought up the point about being acquired, and I might get this wrong, so please forgive me, audience, if I get it wrong. I think it was it was either I think it was the owner or the CEO of Halo who came out and said, like, somebody came out and made a public statement, "We will not be acquired, like, for at least
Mm.
for the next 10 years." It was just
Hmm.
very interesting and sort of like cut across the grain of, not that being acquired is necessarily a bad thing, but he certainly, I think, was addressing that untalked about fear in the marketplace about, hey, I'm about to put my eggs in this basket, and then they're going to get scooped up by another company that I may not like working with, right?
Right. That's
Um,
right. That's
yeah,
right. I mean,
so
you do get to know your vendors, and I mean, at least we do, and I would hope everyone does. But what kind of a culture they have, I mean, it could all evaporate like that,
culture,
if
interesting.
they're actually acquired. So
So, a lot of people think about features and pricing, right? And it's interesting how you're touching, and you've mentioned this a few times already, Dennis, and I'm wholeheartedly believing, I'm in total alignment with you about sort of that cultural aspect and getting to know these people, right? Let's think about how our customers transact with us, right? A lot of the times, I think our customers just simply put blind trust in us, right? They know, like, and trust us, so they're going to engage with us. And also, the other thing that you said about, asking friends, like, hey, what is it like working with them? Same thing with our clients. So it's funny how we do exactly what our clients probably do to us, is like, hey, I think you used the word scuttlebutt, right? What's the scuttlebutt
right,
out there,
right.
right? Are you part of peer groups? Do you leverage friends in the industry to kind of, bounce things off of?
So that's one area we're growing in. We just joined up with MSP Ignite. So
Okay.
we are part of that peer group. We've sampled some of the ConnectWise community groups, and are interested in exploring that even further. But that's an area we really need to grow in. Just to be honest, we
Yeah.
haven't committed ourselves to that yet. Our service managers definitely already signed up. I need to be part of one as well, and so yeah, that's something we have on our target for this
Well,
year.
we could talk about that offline. Everybody knows
Okay.
that I'm a huge community guy and just love
Yep.
peer
I've
groups. I'm
seen it.
not gonna promote any particular one of them, but I always tell people, like, get thee to a peer group, right?
Right. As a
Just
little
I don't
bit, no, this
involve
isn't
your
a peer group. This isn't a peer group meeting, but it's our webinar. But there is something I've already been to one introductory one, and it's a vulnerability you have to be willing to embrace,
yes,
to be transparent and realize that these people are your community, they're your friend, they're your friends, are your tribe,
yes.
and so it's been what's kept me personally away from it, and I'm learning that I got to let go of that. So
All right,
you'll see me in one soon.
we'll talk more about that offline. We'll have a whole
All right,
episode about that. Maybe we'll have you
sounds
come
good.
back or whatever. So let me flip it around now. You're doing business with a vendor. You've been doing business with them for some amount of time. What are some of those drivers that would make you think about discontinuing that relationship?
Well, I've already mentioned one of them, acquisition.
Right.
It's
Okay.
about a year ago. It really was what ran us off and made us change a huge change in our RMM and PSA. There's definitely acquisition is brings with it a whole lot of uncertainty and turmoil and price change most of the time. And anyway, just a lot of moving chairs there when a company is acquired.
Right.
But beyond that, I mean, other considerations for a tool set, potentially to look at a replacement or ending a relationship with the current vendor is, has that tool set grown stale?
Mm,
Has it been outpaced by the market and
right.
the real world things that we're going through? Have other vendors done it better or integrated it with more tools in one single pane of glass? And then, but a real big one that I think may come out of left field is, how do they handle a breach? Are they open and honest? Are they cagey and dishonest? Because
Right.
if they're not announcing the issues, then they're probably just hiding them. And how they handle downtime or a breach or whatever, a release that didn't go well, anything. Just how do they communicate those kind of things to their clients?
I think communication, transparency, their willingness to show, that they're in it with us. I think those are huge. I totally agree with you. We've seen, certainly now in 2024 and looking back at 2023, we've certainly seen our fair share of incidents where vendors, solution partners, manufacturers of products or services have either stepped up in the right way or have not. So
I'm hopeful
totally
our whole
agree.
community is really maturing along those lines, and that vendors out there are starting to see that that's the best thing to do is get it out quickly, be
Yep.
honest and open, and not try and hide.
I
So
would agree
well,
that that is
yeah,
the trend line. Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that, there's others people out there like you who are kind of seeing the same thing. We talked a little bit about stakeholders within the organization to decide whether to start or discontinue a relationship. I mean, do you, like as a leader, and maybe even speaking to perhaps some of the smaller MSPs that might just have an owner and maybe like a handful of employees, which I would argue that even those handful of employees who are just techs are stakeholders in it. Like, what's your take on getting other people involved in evaluating a new relationship or whether to discontinue one?
Well, I think it's another great question. It's imperative. It doesn't really matter what size you are. I think it's a lot easier early on just to have a top-down approach, and the especially when you're small and you're growing, and sometimes the owner is the tech, and for the first year or two, they're just growing a team underneath them, and a lot of times you do just kind of come home from a conference and dump the tool or
Yeah.
whatever because you just have to have it. But at a certain point, that doesn't scale. You have to start getting their buy-in, and literally, it's even better. You've reached like you know, I don't know, Jumanji level 5 or whatever. You've reached the pinnacle when you're actually getting the request coming up from your technical team, and then you're getting to evaluate at the administration level, or whatever, the C level, what makes sense financially, and then weighing in that way. But your technical team already knows what problems they're having. They already know which tools are giving them the worst fits. They already know where we don't have a tool to answer this problem, and to solve for X. And so when you can get that kind of, instead of it flowing from the top down, really kind of coming up,
Mm,
that's a really, really nice thing to have. I know that's not practical for everyone, but it doesn't really matter what size you are. It's better to talk it out with your team. And like you said, they're all stakeholders, regardless of whether you've given them the title or whatever. They're all, especially if you're smaller, you need every one of those folks that you have working for you.
yep.
And so getting their input's critical.
I will admit, Dennis, I'm the poster child for this is what happens when you don't involve your team in a decision like this, and then it goes boom, right? And I've learned because I'm kind of one of those guys, typical MSP owner, like I think I got all the answers in my head, right? I know I'm right. And then I start asking questions of my own team, like, what do you think about this? Please take a look at this demo. Let me get your feedback. And just the diverse answers I
Right.
get back. And just sometimes I'm like, wow, I was so blind. How did I miss this? Right. And so now I've learned to really check my ego and say, no, I got to involve people. Right. I
Yeah.
can't make this decision
If for
unilaterally.
if for no other reason than the practical reason of adoption, I mean, if you do bring a tool back and they don't understand the big why, they don't get it, they don't know
Yeah,
why you need this tool, and you haven't communicated that well to them, and there hasn't been that conversation in advance, you're going to struggle with getting them to use the tool consistently.
totally.
So yeah,
I think that's another amazing point there too, is just even getting their acceptance or buy-in just so that they like they feel like they were part of the process. Like we found this deficiency when we didn't involve our operations team, our technical people in our sales process. And sales would come in, and I'm exaggerating here. Like, sales would come in and drop some, big hunking style pile of stinking what on us. And the ops team was like, what is this? Like, why? Like, once we started getting them involved in the sales process, doing the proper discoveries and audits up front and getting their buy-in, suddenly, like that, sometimes not ideal customer, everybody's rallied around it, right? So same thing with vendor partnerships. If you invite the technical people who are going to use this tool early, we found that they were just as much champions for it as somebody like me who was wowed at a conference. Final thought on that.
yeah, no, I totally agree. I think when the team, it's like almost everything else you handle in business. If you've got the big why established and you've got buy-in from everyone on the team. You're all marching to the beat of the same drum, and you're all participants in the same outcome. And that's really what we're after. We're after an outcome for our clients. So you want as much adoption and participation as possible.
Got a couple more questions here, and I think these are, some ones that I had thought about that very, I think, important. What do you think are some of the most overlooked values in a vendor partnership, right? I think we think about, oh, we subscribed to their product or service and we turned it on and configured it, and that's great, right? So is it their conferences, their user groups, if they have any? Is it MDF or go-to-market materials? Like outside of just whatever they do, like what are the things that you try to leverage or look for?
Yeah, I think this is really overlooked, or at least I overlooked it for years. There's a lot of bottom line benefit to us to maximize our relationships with our vendors. They have a lot to offer us beyond the product, and their communities are. I mentioned this earlier, but what is their culture like? Do they have communities? Do they have conferences that you can attend? Do you even know? And then typically almost all of them have some sort of group event occasionally, or if nothing else, they have get-togethers at these conferences, surrounding the conferences. So are you taking advantage of those? I mean, the marketing development funds are great, but unless you're spending a ton of money with a single vendor, that's not going to amount to an awful lot. Maybe going to a distributor and consolidating some of your tools, maybe you get some of the benefit out of that. But I think those connections that we're able to make through connection to their community that we might not have been able to make before or otherwise is something I think is overlooked when you're just thinking about a tool that you need to add to your stack, and you're thinking about a vendor that's selling that tool. It's just so much of life is so much more relational than transactional.
Yeah.
And when we really look at it through the relational lens, you do get a lot of bottom line value out of that.
Man, you hit the nail on the head with that one. I couldn't agree more. There's just so much more to the relationship just than the problem that they're solving.
That's what we all want from our clients, right? We all want that relational kind of not transactional relationship with our client and
Yes.
clients. It when you've got that and it's sweet and it's intact, it actually covers an awful lot of mistakes and an awful lot of just human failure and everything else. You get a lot of grace, and I think sometimes we excoriate vendors pretty quickly too because we're just not connected to the vendor.
That is
to be fair to vendors.
Yep, that's big. I tell my technical team all the time, like, why are you getting so hot under the collar here? Like, think about if you were on the other side of the, a coin here, wouldn't you want at least some grace to just make an assumption that it's not their fault, right? Like, work with them. We have a relationship with them. So I encourage even my technical team to get to know their technical team, right?
Yeah.
Super, super important point there, Dennis. I'm really glad that you brought that up. Now, you also said something about relationships, kind of like we've been using this sort of analogy, like our relationship with our clients. Many MSPs want to have one way to enhance that relationship is through some regular meetings. I'm just going to throw around the acronym QBR. I know everybody, like it means different things to different people, but ultimately what it means is that we're meeting with them in some sort of regular way. Do you think we should be doing the same thing with vendors, or at least some of the key ones?
Well, that is a loaded question. I know the right answer. The right answer is yes, we
Okay.
should. But I mean, Robert, I looked at I mean, we started, I guess, 5 years ago. We probably had 6, 7 vendors in our stack. We probably have, we have at least 22 layers in our stack now. And
It's incredible.
some of those vendors consolidate some of those layers. But if I were doing quarterly business reviews with my vendors, I mean, I'm going to be taking a huge chunk of my time. So how you make that work? I'm up for advice and input on that. I just know that if every one of my vendors were calling me every 3 months to stay in connection with me, I'd have very little time left to get my
Full-time
stuff
job.
done.
Actually, it is a full-time job in some larger MSPs that I've
True,
spoken with, right?
a full vendor relationship management position.
But there's got to be
that
a way
makes
to like
sense.
do this on a, at least some of the key ones, and maybe not quarterly, but annual, or like, what do you think?
I think though, if you really have a close relationship with your vendors, I mean, as best you can, some of vendors, they're going to vary, just like friendships. They vary. Some are going to be tighter than others. Some you're just going to identify with more. You're going to get along with more. But if you have those, hopefully you're not waiting 3 months to hear from your vendor. Hopefully you're actually in communication with them, seeing what's going on with them on socials and all this other stuff. So I don't know. I know the answer is yes, we need to have constant dialogue, and that would be the right answer there.
You're spot on there. I think it's the time commitment is the biggest thing. But, I also worry about sometimes when you don't make that intentional investment in the relationship. You're 100% right. A lot of relationships can just work naturally, and you don't have to put a lot of effort into it. I tend to be like one of those type of people, like friends and family. Like I gotta think about calling people. I'm not that
Right.
kind of person. Like, oh, I'm driving home. Let me call Joe. Right? Like, see how he's doing. It's not it's not my brain is not wired that way. But I always feel like I've got to put some effort into the vendor relationship. Now, you brought up something that I want to kind of close and round out this conversation with. And even though we can probably talk for hours about this
Sure. Yeah.
topic, but you talked about, hey, years ago it was like 7, and now it's like I think I forgot what number you used, 20, 25, right? I know somebody who's got like 60 tools in his stack, which I think is absolutely bonkers. Can we have too many vendors? And before you answer that question, you also said something else too about like there's overlap with a lot of these products. I see like a giant Venn diagram where like, hey,
Hmm.
this vendor does like this, and this other vendor does this, but like there's some overlap. And can I maybe
And
knock
they're
one
constantly
out?
moving.
Yeah, and they're constantly moving, right? 'Cause the
Right.
feature, like this is
Yeah.
for non-MSPs should listen to this conversation just to see how crazy it is,
Right.
crazy how
Right.
our world is. But so can we have too many vendors, and should we use all the vendor offerings versus piecemealing between several if there's overlaps?
Uh, so, I mean, again, I think I probably know the right answer, what the right answer should be here.
Yeah,
But I don't. If there is a level that is too many, I don't think I've found it yet. I mean, if you think about the operational tools and then the technical tools, and I mean the like I mentioned, the payment portals and other stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of different vendors that go into the secret sauce of cooking up an MSP and making us, be able to do what we do. And like you said, it is just continuing to grow because the threats just continue to evolve, and
yeah,
you're covering more space, and the edge has moved to the infinity or infinite edge or whatever. It's kind of disappeared,
yeah,
so everything just seems to be enlarging, but we haven't found it yet. I like I, I do know that vendor management is not going away. The problem of vendor management, the challenge of vendor management, is not going away for MSPs. And I like what I see from like channel program with their Navistack, and they're trying to help MSPs get a little bit of vendor management together, knowing when your contracts are going to expire at a glance, getting your the marketing co-branded marketing materials at a fingertip and all that stuff. I
yeah,
also like what I see PAX 8 doing with like Matt Lee and the guys over at PAX 8 with mapping vendors to CIS. So
yeah,
because
yeah. That's
vendors,
very big.
God bless them, they'll tell you whatever. You've got to do your own vetting to know that they actually cover that particular control, and how to what extent do they cover that particular control. And so I see help coming. I see it growing. I see its problem's been identified, but it's definitely. I think we're going to have more tools at our just not to add more tools, but we're going to add more tools to manage the tools that we have. And
We may need one tool to rule them all, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's just crazy to me to think about how some of the things that you said here about it, like just how our lives have just exploded with needing to manage and stay on top of all this stuff. I mean, and there's even topics that we haven't talked about, which we'll have to save for another time. Even just diving into the legal part of their agreements
Hmm.
and picking that
Right.
apart. I mean, it's enough to make your head spin, and wonder how no wonder why some larger MSPs hire a full-time person just to do this, right?
I got into IT because I liked IT, and you know what I'm not doing much of anymore?
I think
IT. So
very good.
it is that's the I think a lot of MSPs resonate with that, but that's
Uh, I
another hat
certainly
we have to wear.
I certainly feel that way, Dennis, a lot of times. But unfortunately, this brings us to the end of our discussion on navigating and managing vendor relationships. Dennis, thank you again for joining me today and helping lift our industry by sharing your wisdom and experience. Very quickly, Dennis, how can people reach or find you?
LinkedIn, we're there. Also, all of our socials are EIT Networks. So we are on Facebook. We've got Instagram. We've got LinkedIn. So connect there, or Dennis at EIT Networks. Feel free to just send me an email.
Awesome, Dennis. That's so gracious and helpful for you to offer yourself out into the community that way. And if you're listening and you don't know Dennis, I would highly recommend that you connect with him, because I've certainly networked with him on LinkedIn and in person, and looking forward to doing more of that with you, Dennis. So thanks to everyone for tuning into our series, MSP Experience Game Changers. Innovative thinkers in the MSP space, graciously sponsored and presented by the folks over at Axcient. If you would like to learn more about their awesome BCDR products, you can contact sales or sign up for a free trial right on their website, www.axcient.com. Just let them know that Robert sent you. Until next time, live long and prosper.